One question that seems to confuse a lot of people who start to use the Nik products is, when should I use Nik Viveza and when should I use Color Efex Pro? When you first look at these two products, they actually look to be very similar and serve similar purposes, but they are in fact very different. Viveza, as I'll demonstrate in a moment, is great for doing landscape photography work and for enhancing images so that they've got a very natural look, which is just what you need for landscape photography. Nik Color Efex, on the other hand, whilst you can achieve some of the similar edits and some of the similar effects, is very much a special effects package to simulate special effects and correct specific problems. So let's take a look at these two products and we'll take a look using this example image that we have of Dent Viaduct. The first thing I'm going to do is open the image in Viveza. The adjustments have already been applied in Lightroom to get it to a reasonable position ready for editing. I'm going to right click first with the mouse and then I'm going to choose to edit in Viveza. Now the first thing you see is this pop-up, and I've got the option here of editing with a copy of the image using Lightroom adjustments. The reason the other two options are greyed out here is because this is a raw file, so you can only take this option. Now I'm going to convert the image as part of the processing into a TIFF format image. I'm going to choose my colour space as Adobe RGB. That gives me a reasonably large colour space for editing images in, and I'm also going to set my resolution to 360 points per inch. Now that's because I'm going to potentially use this image for printing on an Epson printer, and 360 points per inch is the native resolution of the Epson, so it aids quality. Here we are now in Viveza. The interface is very simple. There is a preview in the centre of the screen showing any of the adjustments that we make using the adjustment controls over on the right. Now I'm going to demonstrate how I would go about adjusting this image just to show you the natural results that can be achieved. In a moment after that I'm going to show you just what you can do in Color Efex and how it differs greatly from what Viveza can do. The first thing I'd say about Viveza is it's actually all about changing the tones in the image, so areas of light, areas of dark, opening up shadows, adding more contrast. It does do some adjustments in terms of the warmth and the saturation, but primarily think of it as a tool to control the light in the image. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the histogram down here, and that's using this levels and curves tool. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you'll be very familiar with the curves tool, and this is just the same. What I can first do is adjust the levels, so I can use the black point to close down the histogram here and move the black point into the start of that. I can also do the same with the white point, and that in itself, because I've made this curve steeper, actually increases the contrast in the image. Now you can also affect the midtones if you want, making them lighter or darker. Again, the steeper these curves get here in this area, the more the contrast is that's added. Now we don't want to add too much contrast at this stage, but we do want a little bit, so I'm going to make this look reasonably bright without getting too contrasty. So that's a reasonable start. We can look at the preview to see what the changes are, and there you can see the effect of just making a small curves adjustment and how that's opened up the midtones and increased the contrast. The next thing I'm going to do is move up to the top where I can actually choose these global controls and apply that to the image. Now again, we can adjust the contrast globally if we wish, and we can reduce it. Now I'm going to leave that as it is at the moment, around 1 or 0, and I can also use the structure tool, which will add in a little bit more structure. Now at the moment, the areas that I'd like to adjust on the image are the areas of blue up here in the sky. It's a little too much intensity. I'd also like to add a little bit more saturation into the foreground grasses, and potentially I would open up the shadows on the viaduct and possibly make these shadows here just a little bit more dense, to add a little bit more impact into the center of the image. So let's start off then by using the control points to make a selection on the sky. I'll just put the mask on so that you can see where we're making the selection, and we can make that a little larger and we'll hide that. Now what you can do here is actually increase the brightness of that area, and it lightens it. I could have used the shadow adjustments tool as well, and I can also reduce the saturation a little bit there, and that actually makes the sky look quite a bit more natural. Now the next thing I want to do is add some structure into the clouds. So again, I can view my selection. So there we are, you can see how good these control points are at making selections. And I'm going to add in some contrast, and I'm going to open up the shadows a little bit so it doesn't get too dark, and I'm going to add in a little bit of structure into the clouds, and that's made the sky quite a lot nicer in terms of appeal. Next we're going to make a selection of the grass in the foreground, so we'll move the control point till we get a good selection. There we go, and we'll just size it like so. This time we're going to increase the saturation, and I'm going to also increase the contrast in the grass. And with us selecting the foreground, we might also add a bit of structure into the grass specifically. Now let's select the viaduct, and we can see what we're selecting there, and we've got a reasonably good selection of the viaduct. We'll just make that very specific to the viaduct, and we can open up the shadows slightly, add a little bit of contrast back in, and a tip for you, you can also open up shadows using the structure on some of the images. So there we go. Now let's make a selection in the bottom corner here, and let's just move that around. There we go. I'll make it a little bit wider, and now we'll make that darker by reducing the brightness, and you can also achieve the same by reducing the shadows like so. And we'll do the same now by copying that control point, so we'll duplicate it there, drag that across, and we move it into that corner as well, and that balances out the image. Now at this stage I think the central point there on the viaduct is looking a little bit too light, so I'm going to just darken that off by reducing the shadows adjustment. Okay, there's the difference in the image. I've probably gone overboard here in terms of contrast, so let's just reduce that a little bit now, and we can also open up the shadow adjustment using that tool globally, and there we go. If you want to add in a little bit more global saturation you can do, but there you have quite a change from the original to the adjusted, and you've achieved quite a natural look, but overall the image is very appealing. I'll save that now, and then we can take a look at Color Efex Pro. This time we have the image open in Color Efex Pro. The interface is slightly different to the Viveza interface. Over here on the left you've actually got quite a lot of presets. Now the presets are special setups of adjustments and filters that can be used, and these filters that are on the left have categories which you can select to filter them, and some of these have already been set up by Nik as to suitable for weddings or landscapes or architecture, or you can see them all. What you do in terms of making an adjustment to this is select one of these filters with its presets. So let's go for the Pro Contrast, and the adjustment appears over on the right side of the screen. Now what you have here are some sliders that you can adjust. So let's take a look at the 3 sliders we have here. We've got the correct color cast, which tries to neutralize any color cast Viveza thinks is in the image. We have a contrast correction, which can actually be quite strong, and we've got a dynamic contrast, which tries to increase contrast in the midtones of the image but not actually at either end. So between those 3 sliders you get to control quite a lot of contrast adjustment. The interesting thing with Color Efex Pro is that you can actually stack these filters up further. So another filter we might try to use here is the Skylight Filter, which tries to remove a blue cast from the image. Now, like Viveza, you have control points, so you could limit this adjustment to the grass and keep it well away from the sky. And then we've got the strength slider here. So already there we're creating an image that looks something like the image we created with Viveza, and you can see there the difference using the compare option. So we'll add another filter, and this time we'll add the lens vignette. Ooh, that's a little strong there, and we will adjust that so that we achieve a reasonably nice edge to the image, and that tends to focus the viewer's attention to the center. Now some of the things we haven't adjusted here are things like the sky. You can't control that to the same degree. We can't really open up the shadows here very easily, and you have to add quite a number of filters and know which ones will do which in order to achieve a good result. The other thing is, though, there's a lot of special effects that you can achieve with Color Efex Pro. The name suggests it's all about effects. So whilst we've got these adjustments such as levels and curves and so on, you don't have the same flexibility as you do with Viveza for creating natural images. Let's add a few more filters just to show you what I mean by this. So we have a paper toner where you can select lots of different color adjustments. So this is all about adding in special effects. So let's delete that one. We'll add another special effect. So this time we might choose pastels, and you can see there, you know, you've got the type of look you might achieve with some old film, and really at the end of the day it doesn't create a natural image in the same way that Viveza does. So what I would advise is, if you like your landscape photography and you want to achieve a natural look, start with Viveza, use it to control the colours and to some extent, and also primarily the tones in the image to achieve that look you want. Use it as a core part of your workflow. If you find that there are specific areas of your image that you'd like to enhance or use special effects with, that's the time to switch into Color Efex Pro. The only exception to this is where you might be aiming to convert your image into black and white, where sometimes it can help to enhance the image with Color Efex Pro before converting, but that's a much more advanced topic. So for now, Viveza for standard workflow to achieve a natural result, and Nik Color Efex Pro for special effects.